here, and welcome to Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. I'm your host, and on this show we're going to be breaking down all of the day's movie news and kind of giving a little bit of background into what it all means for the production in general, such as casting decisions, trailer announcements, director announcements, things like that. So, without any further ado, let's get into today's topics. And the first topic I want to talk about is something that I've been waiting for almost a decade. Pixar yesterday, during a shareholders meeting, went out and announced that not only are they developing a sequel to Cars, they're going to be doing a third Cars movie, but they're also doing Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2! There's no other word. It's going to sound kind of hokey, but there's no other word to say than this is incredible. It's incredible that they are doing this. I mean, it's taken almost 10 years now for them to do a sequel. The movie came out in, I believe, 2004. So it's taken them now about 10 years to start developing a sequel, and out of all of the Pixar movies that have come out, this has been the only movie that looked like it needed a sequel, or at least deserved a sequel, or warranted a sequel. All the other ones were standalone stories that never needed to go anywhere. They closed themselves off. Look at Toy Story. I mean, granted, Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3 were phenomenal movies. You look at Cars. The reason that Cars has gotten all of its sequels is because John Lasseter, who is the director of that, is also the head of Pixar, and it's been like a baby of his, in a sense. It's a project that he's always wanted to do. It's a world where he loves, because apparently when he was a child, or when he was at least very young, he went and traveled a lot with his dad, and his dad was a salesman who drove around a lot, so he always went on Route 66. And so that's why he decided to do a movie based on that. And it also makes a lot of money for merchandising. I know that the second one didn't make anywhere near as much as the first one did, but they made a lot of money on the merchandising. But out of all the movies they've done, Incredibles is the one that they're doing a sequel for. Finally! Finally! I still feel it's taken way too long. It should have been out a couple of years ago already, but I mean, still, it's great that not only are they doing it, but they've got Brad Bird, the writer and director of the original Incredibles, to come on and write the sequel. No word yet if he's going to be directing or not, but as it stands right now, he is just writing it. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back to direct it, but the only thing that would run in his way right now is he's working on a new movie called Tomorrowland, which is a very secretive project that he's working on with Damon Lindelof. The guy who wrote or showrunner and wrote for Lost, co-wrote the scripts for Prometheus and for oh, why am I drawing a blank on it? It just came out not too long ago. Star Trek Into Darkness. So I mean, they got together and they started writing this movie about these contents of this mystery box that they found, and they got a really phenomenal script out of it. It sounds really intriguing. It's based around the Tomorrowland amusement ride at Disney World, but they got George Clooney signed on to be the lead character. They're filming it right now. I believe they're actually almost done shooting. But they got Hugh Laurie to come in and be the antagonist of the movie. And I've been waiting for Hugh Laurie to really break out into movies. I loved him on House. He was a phenomenal character on that. I actually just restarted watching House again not too long ago, and I think it's just an unbelievably good show. He's just great in that role. I hope he does play something different, obviously, but I've been waiting for Hugh Laurie to break out into movies, and he really hasn't. He stuck to a few independent films, and nothing really big. He was originally supposed to be, from what I can remember, he was supposed to be the Michael Keaton character in the RoboCop remake, which I think would have been intriguing to see. And then for what reasons unknown, he had to drop out. So, but they're finally moving forward with the sequel to Incredibles, and I could not be more happy about that. And it's been taking way too long for it to come out. Let's just put it that way. But I am glad that they finally realized that this has a lot of potential. There are a lot of people out there who are going to want to go and see it, and they've got the talent behind it right now to work on it. But we're still going to be several years off. I mean, Pixar has Finding Dory coming out in, I believe, 2015 or even 2016. They have another one that's about going inside the mind. It's going to be all inside people's heads, I guess. And so that one's coming out, I believe, after that. They also had The Good Dinosaur that they were working on, but that I don't know if it got scrapped or if it just got moved significantly. I think it got delayed by like a year and a half or 2 years. So with him not only having to finish Tomorrowland, but Pixar already having a massive slate of movies to come out, I don't think we're going to see this until at least 2018, if not maybe even later. But at least we know it's happening. They're working on it. This is a project I don't see falling apart either. So this bodes really well for this movie coming out. So I'm really excited. They're finally doing Incredibles 2. That's just great news to hear all around. And as I stated on Monday's episode, Sony has actually unveiled the final, quote-unquote, final trailer for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, the one thing I was worried about with this is we've already seen, I believe they've released officially 5 trailers for this movie already, not including the international trailers. So when looking at this movie and they said it was going to be the final trailer, usually means it's going to include a lot of new footage, which this one did. But the one thing I was really afraid of is they were going to just give away everything in the movie. The one bit that I'm really happy about with this trailer is even though we did get a lot of new footage for it, a lot of the footage takes place within scenes that we already know were going to be happening. It gives us a better look at the fight between Rhino and Spider-Man. You actually get to see Rhino moving kind of like a rhino, which I thought was a nice little nod. But you actually get to see part of the fight between Goblin and Spider-Man. They downplayed Electro in this, which is one thing that I'm intrigued about with this movie. Is they've always come out and stated that Electro is the main villain, that Green Goblin and Rhino will be secondary villains. We know that Rhino's only in the movie for about 4 minutes, so Goblin's probably not going to appear till the end. I'm assuming they're hiding a lot of the Electro stuff, unless there's not as much action as we think in this movie, which I doubt. I'm fairly certain there's going to be a lot of action in this movie, a lot of different action scenes. By lots of action, that's what I mean. Different action sequences. There could be really long 5 to 10 minute segments or 10 to 15 minute segments that are all action sequences, but if they only have 3 or 4 of them, then the action scenes not only start to feel repetitive, but the movie feels longer because they're more spread out. Whereas if you have a movie like, look at Transformers, any of the Transformers movies usually has an action beat every 5 minutes or so. So even if it's something a little bit small, I hope that that's what they're going to play up, and that the fact that they've been hiding a lot of that stuff. If they're coming out and saying that Electro's the main bad guy, we've only seen 2 encounters with Electro and with Spider-Man. We've seen him fighting at the power plant, which I'm assuming is near the end. We've also seen them fighting in Times Square. Times Square looks like it's going to be roughly around the middle of the movie. So I think the new scenes do look absolutely incredible. The visuals look amazing. The CGI of him just flying through the city, or so I should say swinging through the city, looks absolutely gorgeous. One person, actually, I was reading a comment online yesterday, and one person said that the first teaser that they put out for this trailer, because they're doing that a lot now, they do teasers for the trailers, and this one just showed a lot of the swinging action, and someone went out and said that, wow, that, you know, they should have released that just as the first teaser. That would have been a great teaser. And funny enough, it looked almost identical, obviously better CG, but it looked almost identical to the very first teaser trailer for the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man back in when it was the trailer was out in 2001. So I thought that was kind of funny that someone said, hey, they should do that as a trailer, but they've already actually done it, which I thought was I thought there was a little bit of humor in that. Maybe that was just me, but I don't know. But yeah, like I said, Rhino looks a lot better than I originally thought. I've stated on other episodes before that I have liked the way they were going with it. When they originally said Rhino was going to be a big mech suit, I kind of rolled my eyes at that. But when you look at the context of the world that they're creating, it makes a lot more sense. You can't really have a guy in a Rhino suit running around. It just looks silly. So them having him in a mech suit makes a lot more sense. And the new footage we're seeing with Spider-Man swinging the manhole cover around to deflect his rockets and stuff like that, I think that looks really cool. All just the little tiny bits of information that we're getting now from this movie. I'm starting to get more of an idea of what the movie's about, which I both like and don't like. If you want a really good stark contrast, look at Godzilla and look at how Warner Brothers is advertising Godzilla. They're hiding all of the main money shots for their movie. They haven't shown them yet. They haven't shown anything like that yet. They've shown a couple of really cool shots, but for the most part, I mean, you look at Amazing Spider-Man 2, and we now, I believe this is now our 6th trailer for it. This is one of the reasons why NATO, or the National Association of Theater Owners, went ahead and signed a petition stating that movie studios could only release up to 2 movie trailers a year per film, that the trailers cannot exceed 2 minutes in length, and that each studio has 2 exemptions from that every year. So I hope that they're not using one of them with Spider-Man, because they're doing way too much advertising with this. People know that this movie's coming out. They've seen the first one. They like the first one. So you don't need to oversell this project, and I feel that that's what they're doing, which, if that's the case, that has me kind of scared, because they're trying to win people over with cool visuals to come into a movie that may not be very good. I don't think that that's the case. Mark Webb has already just come in and signed on to the 3rd one, which means he's happy with what they're doing. The studio is happy with what he's doing. So I don't think that they would allow for that kind of stuff to happen if this movie was not going to be very good. But only time will tell. They've already had to trim some of the movie. They've had to cut out key characters out of the movie, to make sure that it felt tight, it felt cohesive, it didn't feel like Spider-Man 3. Um, but again, they've said that this is the final trailer. The movie comes out in just under a month and a half, about 6 weeks or so, 6, 7 weeks. And the more and more I see of this, and the more and more I see of everything else, again, I'm still waiting for that X-Men trailer to pop up on Monday, but the more and more I see, the lower this movie is actually getting on my most anticipated list of 2014, because they're showing off way too much, and I feel like I've already seen a good portion of the movie. If they do, or if they have been hiding it, this movie's going to be long. If they've been hiding a lot of this footage and a lot of action and a lot of key major characters in this movie, like they haven't shown Norman Osborn. We don't know how big of a role he plays in this. And they got someone like Chris Cooper to play him, which means it's not just going to be a one-off. It's going to be a really interesting character with several different layers and most likely several different appearances throughout the series. So them hiding him, except for his voice, you can hear his voice in the trailer. With them hiding him, not really showing off a lot of Jamie Foxx in this trailer, or in really a lot of the other ones. They've shown a few little bits of him, but not a lot. So I hope that I hope with this movie that we're not going to get an overabundance of characters and of CG and of action scenes and all that kind of stuff. So. But one other thing, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on the show. Last night, Marvel actually debuted what was called Marvel's Assembling a Universe, which was kind of a comprehensive look behind the scenes of where they've gone from the very beginning of announcing Iron Man back in 2006 all the way up to now. So it was really cool to see how they started and how they really were a struggling company when they first started. Now, by I mean struggling, they didn't really have a lot of credentials. They didn't have a lot of credit to their name in terms of what they were capable of. And then they knocked it out of the park with both Iron Man and Incredible Hulk. 1-2 punch in the first year of them releasing movies. They did a phenomenal job with it. Then they came out with Iron Man 2, and then they slowly started unrolling everything. But the main feature about this was last night, not only did we get to see extended looks of Captain America Captain America Winter Soldier, which by the way, if you go online right now, you can actually watch the first 10 minutes of Captain America Winter Soldier. You really get a flavor of the overall tone of the movie, the humor they're going to be going for, the level of action, the hand-to-hand fighting. And they also tease a big showdown coming up relatively early on in the movie, it looks really cool. But I watched it and I was really impressed by it. It felt a little weird in the sense that I felt like I was watching a direct sequel, in a sense, to Captain America the First Avenger, even though none of the creative talent behind that is really involved in the sequel. Everybody's different. I do believe the writers were the same, but the directors, the DOP, most of the crew, the special effects supervisors, all those guys were all different on this project as they were on the first one. It just felt like it was a true sequel, that it fit within that world, and that was one thing that I was really happy to see, even though I know that they were going with a very different vibe with this movie. But it was really cool to see not only all of that footage, but to also see the opening 10 minutes. But one other thing that they did do was they introduced new concept art for Guardians of the Galaxy, with a little bit of behind-the-scenes shots of that. They even showed, you had to look really quick, but they showed the first full-on shot of Ronan the Accuser, who we haven't seen yet. They haven't unveiled him yet. So you got to see him with his mask. He looks pretty cool. It was kind of a blurry shot from the background, but he looks pretty cool. We also got to see some test footage of Rocket Raccoon and Groot. But the main piece, the main thing that everyone was anticipating for this, and they did show off some really intriguing stuff, was for the sneak peek at Avengers Age of Ultron. And one of the main things that they did, the first concept art that they showed, I'm so glad that they did this. It was a very smart move on their part. But they showed off concept art of what their versions of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are going to look like. First off, Quicksilver looks so much better than he does in the images we've been shown from X-Men Days of Future Past. Scarlet Witch, for instance, she has more of a contemporary look with the same color scheme that her costume has to have, but it's a much more modernized and contemporary look at what that character is going to look like. So I was very happy to see the direction that they're going with both those characters. I knew with Joss Whedon being behind the helm of this one and him bringing in these characters that he was not going to let us down with the design of that character. Because a lot of people don't know, Joss Whedon, who's the guy who wrote and directed Avengers and is working on Avengers 2, has written a lot of comic books. He wrote a lot of the main storylines that people love for X-Men, or for, I believe he wrote some Iron Man, but I could be mistaken on that. But he's done a lot of comic book work. And so he really knows this world. He knows these characters, and so he knows how to adapt them, and he knows how to bring them to life. But the money shot, the end all be all money shot, was the shot of Hulk going up against the Iron Man Hulkbuster armor, which looked to be about 1.5 to 2 times the size of Hulk. And this movie is just going to be off the chain. I think, from based on what they showed, because they also showed an image on set of, not only did you get to see a upper body version of the Hulk, like scale size, where they could shoot, they could get their camera angles and stuff like that. They also had on set a live scale model version of the arm, the gauntlet of the Hulkbuster armor. So I have a feeling this is going to be the intro of the film, because that's what they've been shooting so far. And we know the intro of the film takes place in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And we knew it involved the Hulk. Now it looks like it's the Hulk versus Iron Man, or at least a Hulkbuster Iron Man suit. So, but just the fact that those two are going to be throwing down, I think, is awesome. I was hoping that they would have done that in the first Avengers movie, but obviously they didn't have enough time. They only had enough time for Hulk to fight Thor and to fight Loki. So, but they also did show off, and I was really surprised about this, because this movie hasn't even started shooting yet. But Edgar Wright is doing Ant-Man, and Ant-Man's a very intriguing project. But a couple of years ago at Comic-Con, Edgar Wright showed off this test footage that he shot for the film, which just gave a sense of the direction that he wanted to go, the visual effects, and how they might look. But yeah, they actually showed off a couple of finalized versions of that footage. Now, there's no telling as to whether or not that footage is going to make it into the movie, but it gives you an idea of the scope that they're going for. You get a look of the color aspect of the movie, whether or not it's going to be very vibrant or kind of more of a thriller aspect where muted colors are. So you really get a sense of the type of movie they're going by just from these little snippets, and I'm really, really happy to see what they're coming out with. So overall, it was a very good special. It was a very great look into the world of Marvel. So I'm happy to see a lot more. Really looking forward to see a lot more, but cannot wait to see Captain America, the Winter Soldier, when it opens up everywhere on April 4th. So make sure you guys go and check it out. But tying into my last topic I was talking about, they've actually released a new international trailer for Godzilla. It plays very similar to the trailer that we talked about a couple weeks ago. The main difference being is that they did show off a lot of new footage. They still didn't do a major reveal. You got a couple of much better looks at the monster. Not necessarily clearer, but you got more scale, more size, more scope. But you also got to see a better version of the winged creature. The one shot where you could see it kind of peeking through the clouds as it was coming down, and then it cut away. They basically show you the next little segment of that, and you see its wings spread out and about to dive into the ground. So they really did show up that. My favorite shot of the entire trailer was when I guess a bunch of explosions had happened, and Godzilla is standing in all this dust. You can't even see him, and then all of a sudden a lightning blast or explosion goes off behind him, and you see just the silhouette. I thought it was a beautiful shot. It's haunting because you still can't see what it is, but yet it's so massive and it's coming at you. So I'm really jumping on board with the way that they are marketing this movie. I really like the way that they're marketing it. But what I feel that they need to do is have the next trailer, or the final trailer, finish. Don't really show any more of the action, but finish with Godzilla about to go toe-to-toe with a monster. If anyone remembers the first trailer for The Incredible Hulk, the one with Edward Norton, the first trailer, all it was little snippets of footage from the final showdown between Hulk and Abomination. That was it. That was all it was. And it ended with them flying through the air, and just as they were about to connect, it cut to black, and it showed up saying The Incredible Hulk. So if they were to do something like that, that people would be jumping out of their seats in excitement. From the description that we've heard from the footage they showed at South by Southwest, people are going to be jumping out of their chairs for that footage. And to show that off, just that. Don't show any more. Don't show them fighting. Don't show Godzilla in all his glory trying to be a hero. Make Godzilla look as though he's a menace to humanity, and also he's just conveniently fighting another or not conveniently, sorry, that he's fighting another monster not to save people, but to injure that because it's the same size as him and it can hurt him. You know, do stuff like that. Fight him just because you're a fighter. Don't try to be the hero and try to save people. I hope they don't bring that across in the trailers, because as far as I'm aware, they kind of will play that angle up near the end of the movie, that he's a little bit more heroic. But I mean, the fact that we got to see that winged creature, I think is a step in the right direction, and I do have a feeling that within the next month we're going to get a final trailer, just like what they've done with Spider-Man. But unlike Spider-Man, I hope they don't show us everything. So we're only going to have to wait and see, but all in all, it was a very good, quick little look at the film with a couple of different shots, a little bit more narration from Bryan Cranston's character, which I'm really looking forward to this only because it's a character-driven blockbuster. That's the term that they're using for this. So I'm really intrigued by it, and with them not showing all the major bits, I think we have a real good chance of really being surprised this year with Godzilla. So if they do that, that only means I can sum it up with 3 words. If Godzilla does really well, Pacific Rim 2. It's all but guaranteed. If Godzilla does really well, Pacific Rim 2 will happen. If you loved Pacific Rim and you want to see a sequel, go and see Godzilla, regardless if Godzilla is interesting to you. You don't even need to go and watch it. Just buy a ticket for it. Make sure the movie succeeds because it's the same company. It's Warner Brothers and Legendary. Legendary is now part of Universal, but they still have their deal with Warner Brothers for Godzilla and for Pacific Rim. So if they do sequels, those companies will be in bed together. If that's the case, that means that if Godzilla does really well, we will get, or it's very likely that we will get a Pacific Rim 2. So if you want to get Pacific Rim 2, make sure you go out and buy a ticket for Godzilla when it opens up this summer. I believe it's May 16th that it will open. So even if you have no interest in seeing it, buy a ticket for it because it will guarantee the type of movie that you want to see. I touched on that on Monday's episode, but if you want to see more movies of a certain type, go and see them. If you don't go and see them and you just download them, the studios will not make money and therefore they will not make more. So just keep that in mind. So the next one, this seems to be kind of trailer day. The next one here is Disney has released the full trailer, the first full trailer, not a teaser trailer or anything, but the first full trailer for the upcoming Maleficent. Now, for those of you who don't know, Maleficent is kind of a retelling of the Sleeping Beauty storyline, but it's told from the villain's point of view. Now, everything that we've seen from this movie so far, up until this trailer, hasn't really had me impressed outside of the initial shot of her raising the trees and the vines and stuff like that out of the ground. Outside of that, I wasn't really intrigued by it. I thought it was going to be another Alice in Wonderland, which I did not care for. I felt that that was just, that's the only time where I feel that the term too CGI'd comes into play, because it was all so fake. If you're going to do a lot of CGI, at least try to mask some of it by making it look real. But if you're going to go completely fake, you're just, to me, personally, it's a waste of money because there's nothing new about it. It looks cheap. It looks cheap. Like, that's what I thought when I saw Alice in Wonderland. I thought it looked cheap. I felt the same way when I saw Oz the Great and Powerful, but the difference was with Oz the Great and Powerful, it was a better story. It was a more enjoyable film. It had better cast. All in all, I just felt that Oz the Great and Powerful was a better movie, but I still didn't really care for the overabundance in CGI. If anyone who knows me knows that I have no problem with computer graphics if they're used correctly. You could have, like, look at Avatar. I loved Avatar. Not the most original story, but I loved the world that they created. It was because it was seamless. You could feel as though you were there. But when you watch these movies, they're just not that way. This new trailer for Maleficent, however, really shows off a very realistic approach to a fantastical world. You can tell there's a lot of CGI. Obviously, there's basically tree-like characters that come out that are almost warriors for her. She has giant wings. She's flying through, between all these rocks and all these islands and stuff. She's battling a whole bunch of people. That action scene, by the way, that big battle they're going to have, looks incredible. It was reminded of the Chronicles of Narnia when I saw that in Lord of the Rings. Like, those massive action set pieces between two huge armies. But one of them is creature, one of them is man. You really get a sense of why she becomes evil or why she turns out to be a bad guy in the end. That's the whole purpose of this movie. They're taking what's called the Wicked approach. Anyone who's seen Wicked on Broadway or seen it in a live play knows that they take the villain from a well-established movie and they turn it on its head and explain exactly why they came that way. Or maybe they're just misunderstood. Maybe they're not actually a villain. They're just portrayed that way because of everybody else's actions. So I'm intrigued to see it. But the main draw here is Angelina Jolie. I mean, when was the last time that anyone saw Angelina Jolie as a lead in a movie and she looked like she was having a lot of fun? The last one that I can think of, just off the top of my head, was Salt. And I didn't think she looked like she was having a lot of fun. It just looked like it was the type of role that she fit into. But this one, she's just eating up the scenery. Everything about this movie, she just looks like she's having a great time. And I love that when actors do that. I loved it when Leonardo DiCaprio did it for Wolf of Wall Street, because the last several movies he's been in, all the characters all seemed very similar. they were all very kind of, they were all dark and brooding, and they all had very troubled pasts, and they were all kind of really sad, or not sad, but depressed, and he kind of played the same character, and in this movie you could tell he was having a lot of fun with the character. So I, I'm I'm really excited to see this. This trailer alone won me over. So make sure you guys check the description below because I got links for both this trailer, the Godzilla International trailer, and the final trailer for Spider-Man. So make sure you guys check that out. And so the last bit of movie news today we have to talk about is Doug Liman, one of my favorite directors actually. He directed Go, he directed The Bourne Identity, he directed Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He has the upcoming Edge of Tomorrow coming in, which I'm very intrigued to see. It's with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt, and it's basically Groundhog's Day meets District 9. And it's Tom Cruise plays a soldier who judging by the trailer, he's someone who was arrested and he's just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he is put into service to fight this alien invasion that's coming. So he's part of this massive army, and most of them get slaughtered on the first mission. But then he all of a sudden wakes up, and it's the same day. And he keeps going through that. Whenever he dies, he just wakes up. Dies, wakes up, just like Groundhog's Day. But Emily Blunt's character actually is aware of this because she's gone through something similar. And so she actually starts training him, and he is trying to stop his inevitable death from actually happening. And so I'm really intrigued to see what direction they go with this movie, if it's just a straight-up action film, if it's more sci-fi, because I love both genres, but I'm getting a very sci-fi vibe from this, and I'm hoping they go that route because there's a lot of potential for something like that. But Doug Liman, once he's done with that movie's coming out in June. He's just signed on to direct the live-action adaptation of Splinter Cell. And anyone who has known about Splinter Cell or knows the games knows that Sam Fisher's been a very tough cookie to crack. Those games have been always very difficult to try to adapt, only because they're all espionage. Every part about them is espionage. There's not really, outside of a few cutscenes here and there's not a lot of backstory to go into, at least with the newer games, unless you've played the original. So with them coming on board, for a while, Peter Berg, the director of Battleship and Friday Night Lights and The Rundown with The Rock about 10 years ago, he was signed on for a while to direct that movie. He just stepped down not too long ago, and now Doug Liman has come on to direct it. So with someone like Doug Liman coming on, I have a really strong faith in this project. He's a very capable director. He knows action. He knows characters. And as long as the studio kind of leaves him be a little bit, I think this is going to be a much better film than some of the movies that he's put out. But I got to tell you, if anyone has seen the theatrical version of Mr. and Mrs. Smith and then also seen the director's cut is very different. It was re-edited differently. They used different music. They used different sequences altogether, or they recut up sequences differently. It was so much better of a movie, and right there you can see studio involvement and what they do to actually ruin a movie when they think that all they're doing is they're making it more marketable for more people. But all they do is they just end up ruining it. So I definitely recommend, if you love Mr. and Mrs. Smith, definitely try to check out the director's cut, because I found it to be a much more enjoyable movie. Even though I liked Mr. and Mrs. Smith when it first came out, I thought this was just a much more complete film. It was a much better, well-constructed, well-rounded film. But Tom Hardy, who played Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, he was also in the movie Warrior, and he's currently he's going to be playing Mad Max in the upcoming Mad Max Fury Road, which is now finally got a release date of, I believe, 2015, February or March of 2015. But he is signed on to play Sam Fisher. And that's, I think, a really intriguing choice. When you look at him and you look at Sam Fisher, he definitely does fit the mold. He's got the badass aspect to him. He's got the how you pronounce it, the machismo aspect of it, the manly man aspect of Sam Fisher. But he also has the psychotic nature of Sam Fisher. Anyone who's played the games knows what I'm talking about. As far as I'm aware, it's being eyed for a 2015 release date, but with 2015 being so crowded, it already being March of 2014, and they're now just signing on a director, that means that he's got to probably prep the movie for at least 3 to 6 months to make it decent and not to just pick up where someone else has left off. So if they need to give him at least 6 months of prep time before they start shooting, doing a summer film this quickly, that might not be the greatest decision. They may need a little bit more time to really get all the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and everything like that. I would not be surprised if it got pushed to 2016, and actually 2016 is becoming a pretty big year. But when looking at just video game adaptations, and the fact that video game adaptations for the most part haven't done very well, look at Need for Speed. I enjoyed it, and a lot of people that I've talked to that have seen it really enjoyed it. But the movie didn't make all that much domestically. It opened third. It opened with just under 20 million. But it's made a lot more money internationally. But one thing to take into account with 2015, there's already two major video game releases coming out. We have Assassin's Creed coming out in, I believe, July of 2015 with Michael Fassbender in the lead. And then we also have Warcraft coming out in December of 2015, which to me is odd timing for Warcraft because it's opening, I believe, if it's not opening on the same day, it's opening within a week of Star Wars Episode 7. That is like Marvel and DC opening up a movie on the same weekend. You're going after the same people. You're going to hurt each other's films and your own films by opening up at the same time. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Warcraft get pushed a little bit, maybe to March, or maybe even open up a month earlier and do November 2015. But we got two major video game releases with a lot of talent behind them. We have Duncan Jones, who directed Moon and also Source Code. If anyone, by the way, anyone who hasn't seen Moon, you need to check out Moon right now. It's with Sam Rockwell and the voice of Kevin Spacey. It is probably one of the absolute best sci-fi movies ever made. So definitely go and check that movie out. But he also directed Source Code with Jake Gyllenhaal. And he's directing Warcraft. So they got a great guy behind the talent. They have Travis Fimmel from Vikings. They have Dominic Cooper from Need for Speed and Captain America. Who else do they have? They got a really good cast for this movie. Oh, what's her name? She was in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. She was also in Deja Vu. Paula Patton is also in the movie. So they've got a really eclectic cast, a really great, amazing cast for them. Ben Foster is also in it, and he's probably one of the most underrated actors working today because he doesn't really get lead roles. And anyone who's seen any of his movies, I remember the first movie I ever saw him in was oh, I can't even remember the name of it. He played a troubled student, and Tom Cavanaugh played a teacher who was really trying to mentor him. And the kids that he started hanging out with were planning on shooting up the school because they were all bullied. And throughout the course of the film, he really kind of built up their trust, and then he really just shows how much of a person he's grown into by the end of the film. It was just an amazing performance. And he's gone on to do, like, he was in the X-Men films. He was an Angel in X-Men Last Stand. He was most recently seen in Lone Survivor, which he stole the show in that movie. He was by far the best in that movie. He upstaged Mark Wahlberg, which is, in my personal opinion, it's very difficult to do. I think Mark Wahlberg brings a really interesting screen presence whenever he does a movie. So for someone to be able to upstage him and still not be really the lead of a major movie yet, I think is intriguing. But with the cast they've got for that, and with Assassin's Creed being done, I'm pretty sure they're going to end up pushing this to 2016, not have video game overload, because if all, let's say all three of those movies did really well, that most likely would mean that we'd get a flood of video game movies. More so, like, I would say the amount of video game movies we would get if all three of those movies opened in the same year and did really well, we would have more movies released that are based on video games in 1 year than we get superhero movies that are released in 2 to 3. The studios would jump on board. There are so many more video game titles that are recognizable than there are comic books. There's more content to draw from. Now, a lot of video games translated into movies might not feel like video game movies. You look at The Last of Us. The Last of Us is definitely not going to feel like a video game. You look at what other ones are they doing? Oh, I can't even think of any others that they're trying to do right now. But there are a lot of, if they were to do movies based on certain video games, they're not going to appear. They're trying to do one on Uncharted and Infamous. If they did movies based on those, they would not feel like video game movies, especially Uncharted. Uncharted would feel like a modern day take on Indiana Jones. Infamous would seem more like a superhero film than it would a video game film. So they do have a lot of room to work with, but when you're picking titles like Assassin's Creed, that is going to feel a little bit like a video game movie. Look at Prince of Persia. That felt like a video game movie. Warcraft, they're gonna blow away a lot of people's expectations with this movie. And a lot of people have a misconception with this. This is not a movie that is based off of World of Warcraft. This is based off of Warcraft, the first Warcraft game. It's not based off of World of Warcraft. They're going to build up to that. So that's probably World of Warcraft is probably going to be the third or fourth Warcraft film that they do. They're not going to jump right into it. They're going to lead into it. Because why would you... That would be like Avengers. The first Avengers movie, them using Thanos. where do you go from there? You can't. It's very difficult to find an antagonist who's going to have that much of a presence. They just wouldn't do that. So they're going to build up to World of Warcraft for probably, if this movie does well, Warcraft 2 will probably be out sometime in 2017, 2018. They're going to put a green light on it right away. And then we probably see Warcraft 3 or World of Warcraft in either 2020 or 2021. So we're about 6-7 years away from a World of Warcraft movie, but for right now we got Warcraft coming out with an amazing cast, great director. They're filming it right now. It'll be probably going to get footage at Comic-Con, maybe just a little teaser, because they showed concept footage last year at Comic-Con. So with them doing it this year and they've already started filming, probably going to have some effect shots done and they're going to show a little bit. So this year's going to be really intriguing down there. I'm really excited to go. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to actually get tickets for it, which was a little bit of a bummer, but I will still be attending. I will be in the area, so I will be covering a lot, and I'm going to see what I can do. I'm actually going to be taking a day or two when I'm down there and actually traveling to Los Angeles. So when I'm down there, I'll be doing a couple of episodes. I'm going to see what I can do about some cameos. I don't know if I'm going to be successful or not, but I would love to be able to get a cameo or two in there, or possibly even an interview. I mean, everyone can dream, right? So, but yeah, I mean, with Warcraft coming out, if that one does well, that'll open up the floodgates. And we will see so many more types of films that are coming out. And Hollywood will have really kind of taken the band off of that. They're going to try to, they're not going to be as secretive with their projects. They're not going to, you know, kind of cringe at the idea of a certain type of movie. If that movie does well, it'll open the floodgates for a lot more possibilities. So that is one of the ones that we're really waiting to see exactly what they can do with. So I'm really excited about that. And I hope we get some more information about it soon. But if not, both Assassin's Creed and World of Warcraft, or sorry, Warcraft, coming out next year, we're going to be seeing some footage within the next 6 months, guaranteed. Well, that'll about do it for us here on Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. Thank you guys for joining me. Go ahead and click the subscribe button there. Make sure also you guys follow me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Niklsun, Niklsun, to get updates on all of your movie news information. And again, don't forget to click subscribe so that you guys can get updates whenever I post a new show. And I will be doing that for the foreseeable future every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. So yeah, without any further ado, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to click subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and you guys have a great day. Take care.